Welcome back to PH.d TV, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about James Bond and where I think Eon could potentially do with future movies. So again, this is just my opinion on what I think Eon could do with future James Bond movies, where the movies could go. This is just an opinion, doesn't mean it's the right opinion, it's just an opinion, my opinion. With that being said, after this video, or during the video, if you get inspiration sparked, let me know where you think the James Bond movies should go from here. Or if you have an original idea, drop them down below. And if you agree with my opinion, let me know down below and maybe we can start a conversation. I'm going to try and start making some conversation in the comments if they are there. So something the James Bond movies have done since Casino Royale, and technically there's a Quantum of Solace short story, but that was not an adaptation. But so with that being said, not since Casino Royale, and since Casino Royale, and all the way back to, I think, and before Casino Royale, not really since Octopussy, in which you could really say any of the, previous movies were loose adaptations of the book, not really an actual adaptation all the time. The James Bond movies have actually been original scripts, original ideas, maybe borrowed properties from other source materials, but there's not actually been another adaptation from another continuation Bond novel. Now you could say, that's a good thing, because then you have the books being the books and the movies being the movies, so you always have new Bond content. So that way, if you like the idea of having more Bond content than not, you always have two means of outlets, in terms of books, in terms of the movies. But now imagine this, just take your mind back, all the way back to the 60s, 70s, and 80s, back when they actually were producing these films, and that there were books to actually accompany what you were about to watch. Potentially because, again, there was not really an adaptation that was a full-on adaptation after so long. But imagine that your favorite, or it's my favorite, but I'm gonna assume if you're watching this, you like James Bond enough. But just imagine that a new James Bond movie is announced, but they also announce that it is based off of one of the novels. Now, they don't say what novel it is, but that's what keeps the mystery. They're like, what novel is it? So from a marketing standpoint, not only did you just get people really excited because they're doing something they have not done in a long time, but now you have people looking at the books, now you have people ordering, now you have people just digging around just exactly what books are there on James Bond that are not the Ian Flemings, since we've kind of filmed all those at this point, loosely. And with that being said, I have two great ideas, and you'll see how it's actually a two-part idea, because it's the same thing, but you'll see why there's two parts. For starters, we've all heard the rumor, especially if you're a James Bond fan like I am, that Christopher Nolan has been the director that Eon is just eyeballing according to the rumor mill. And like every person in the world, we are Christopher Nolan fans. He may not be your actually favorite, your actual favorite director of all time, but I would about bet that he has made a movie that just has blown at least your mind once. Either Inception, the Dark Knight movies, Memento, The Prestige. You get the idea. Christopher Nolan's the guy. Heck, he just won Best Picture for Oppenheimer, which also won Best Director, and I think it won 7 Oscars. So with that being said, imagine this. Let's say that they adapt some novels, and they say that we are going to adapt the Anthony Horowitz trilogy. Because if you ask me, Christopher Nolan would not stick around for a whole bunch of movies. But if you were to actually get him to jump on and do a really auteuristic film-making experience of James Bond, this would be the answer. So this is the first book by Anthony Horowitz, Trigger Mortis. And what is fascinating about this book, as well as the two others that follow it, Forever and a Day, as well as A Mind to Kill, the books actually take place in 3 different parts of James Bond's life. This first book is a direct sequel to Goldfinger, takes place in the 50s, and it's just like the original Ian Fleming novels, where it's more of a spy noir novel rather than a full-on secret agent movie with not a whole lot of gadgets. And if you're curious, there was not a whole lot of gadgets in the early books of Bond. The gadgets were more of a thing introduced in with the movies and then got adopted in later novels because that just became synonymous with Bond himself, but that's also why you don't see too many gadgets also in Casino Royale when they really went for the adaptation. So again, it takes place in the 1950s, so it would actually be a period piece. And I'm going to mention this also in a later video about one of my favorite one-off ideas for movies. But this would be a trilogy of films, so it'd be a short run for whoever this actor is. but the first book would actually take place with Bond mid-career. The second book that I mentioned, Forever and a Day, it actually takes place as Bond's very first mission before Casino Royale, when he gets his 00 status when the original 007 is dead and he has to replace him to continue the mission. So now you have a book that takes place at the very beginning of Bond's career, the very middle of Bond's career, and as you would imagine, the third book takes place about the last mission he's ever done. And that is actually taking place directly after The Man with the Golden Gun, the book version, not the movie version. So to finish up this part one idea of where they need to go with these movies in the future, as an opinion, as an idea of how could you expand on this character in a way that's fresh and new and something you just haven't done in a long time. My pitch is to get Christopher Nolan to do 3 movies, actor in specific, and have a really poignant time period piece of Bond of the old, in Sean Connery's era, so to speak, where it all started, where you see Bond's beginning, middle, and end. And let that be not necessarily the defining movies of Bond, because Casino Royale is low-key one of the best movies of all time to me.
Yes. Considerably.
And that's a great movie for, in general, watching, not even for a Bond movie, it's just a great movie. But to have something that's different for a short amount of time, a period piece, something that follows a book sales for Bond will go up and might even create new audiences, which if we're just thinking again as a marketing, as a fan standpoint, but as a business standpoint, that's just money in the bag for Eon and Ian Fleming estate. All right, and for part 2 of pretty much the same idea, this would actually be if they want to go ahead and just get a young actor and just make another 7, 8 movies. Well, not 8 movies, no actor's done that. But make at least 5 movies over the next 20 years. It's still under the same concept that they adapt the books, because there are plenty of novels to choose from. You can follow John Gardner books just fine. Now granted, John Gardner can be a little cheesy, but again, you can adapt it for modern times. This takes place in the 80s, so it's not going to adapt exactly the same way, but also Casino Royale was written in the 50s, and yet, you know what? They still made one banger of a film in 2006.
Considerably.
And if you don't want to do a John Gardner, you can still do one of these. I'm going to read this one here soon, but you know what? It's still a James Bond novel, and whenever I got this, I read the reviews, and they said this is classic Bond at its finest, that it is a good novel if you like Bond. So you know what? They can adapt that one too. And let's say this, just for marketing purposes, because they're probably going to still team up with Omega, watch brand, just to, sales. People are going to want to know about the watches, and you got to consider for marketing, they're going to want to know sartorially, what is he wearing, the Bond lifestyle, that sort of thing. But here's the thing, there's also a novel that takes place in modern time. Jeffrey Deaver, he made a book that takes place modern day. This came out not too many years after Casino Royale, I don't believe, but this is a modern novel with modern things, and it's still a Bond novel, and there's an option there. And keep in mind, I am someone who was born in the 90s, and I grew up in the age, and keep this in mind, it's the concept, in the age of which Harry Potter came out. And I remember being a kid that was prepared to read the book before the movie came out, so I could go to the theater and experience the movie as a fan of the book, also the movie, but just be a Harry Potter fan. Now let's do that with the James Bond movie. What if they said, we are going to adapt Devil May Care? Okay, wonderful. I am probably going to actively sit on this separately, read it, just to prepare for the movie. So when I go to the movie, I'm just sitting there enjoying the fact that I got to have Bond in 2 different ways, to be able to read, to be able to watch. It's a whole different experience when you're not always going so blind into the experience of a film. Because to me, that's what makes it fun sometimes, is when you can combine different parts of your life, entertainment factors, and marry it. That's something new and something Bond has not done for years. So with that being said, that's my opinion on where I believe the James Bond films could go in the future. Eon, if you see this, I won't take credit. I'll just be happy. And again, comment down below what you think about my idea about adapting a Bond novel, adapt it for modern times, make it a period piece. I honestly would not probably adapt the period piece unless it was going to be a one-off, trilogy or a one-off separate thing, because I kind of like my Bond in modern day. I like my Bond being someone I can look up to in the instance of today. But it would be an experiment all its own, and it would be different. In a world where entertainment just is just copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste. It's different by also doing something that they used to do forever ago. So with that being said, let me know what you think. Subscribe down below. And as always, this has been PH.d TV, and I'll see you next time.